Welcome back to Decafacts. Today we're going beyond timelines and into the stories that shaped history.
Presidents don't just govern, they often lead in times of crisis.
Few challenges test a president like war. Some were reluctant commanders, others saw war as opportunity, but all had to make decisions that cost lives and changed nations. Here are 10 US presidents who led the country through war and how those wars shaped their presidencies and the country itself. 10. James Madison, the War of 1812. In 1812, tensions with Britain boiled over. Trade restrictions, impressment of American sailors, and frontier skirmishes pushed the US into its first declared war under President James Madison. Washington, D.C. was burned. The young republic was nearly overrun. But after a few hard-fought battles, including the defense of Fort McHenry, American forces held. The war ended in a draw, but it boosted national pride and helped define American identity. For Madison, it proved that the fragile new government could survive foreign invasion. 9. James K. Polk, the Mexican-American War. James K. Polk believed in manifest destiny, the idea that the United States was destined to expand across North America. In 1846, that belief led to war with Mexico after a disputed border incident in Texas. The war was short but brutal. When it ended, the U.S. had acquired vast new territory including California, Arizona, and New Mexico. Polk achieved his expansionist goals, but the war intensified tensions over slavery. Tensions that would erupt in the next generation. 8. Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War. When Lincoln took office in 1861, southern states were already seceding. Within weeks, the country plunged into civil war. Lincoln had never served in a national military role, but he quickly rose to the occasion. He navigated one of the bloodiest conflicts in U.S. history, preserved the Union, and issued the Emancipation Proclamation, reframing the war as a fight against slavery. Lincoln led through devastation and did not live to see the peace he secured. He was assassinated just days after the war ended in 1865. 7. William McKinley, the Spanish-American War. In 1898, President William McKinley sent troops to Cuba after the mysterious explosion of the USS Maine. The resulting war against Spain was quick and transformative. In just a few months, the U.S. took control of former Spanish territories, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. McKinley found himself overseeing an American empire. Though the war was popular at first, the brutal occupation of the Philippines sparked domestic backlash. McKinley didn't live to see its end. He was assassinated in 1901. 6. Woodrow Wilson, World War I. When war broke out in Europe in 1914, Wilson pledged neutrality. But after repeated attacks on American ships and the infamous Zimmerman telegram, the U.S. entered World War I in 1917. Wilson led a reluctant nation into global war, sending over 2 million troops to fight in Europe. After victory, he proposed the League of Nations, but the U.S. never joined. Though Wilson helped end the war, he couldn't win the peace at home. A stroke and political resistance left his vision unfulfilled. 5. Franklin D. Roosevelt, World War II. FDR was already leading the U.S. through the Great Depression when World War II broke out in Europe. After Pearl Harbor in 1941, America entered the war on both the Pacific and European fronts. Roosevelt became a wartime president, mobilizing industry, coordinating with Allied leaders, and steering the nation toward victory. He was elected to 4 terms, but died in 1945, just weeks before Germany surrendered. His leadership redefined the presidency and reshaped the world order. 4. Harry S. Truman, World War II and the Korean War. Truman inherited the war and the atomic bomb. Within months of taking office, he authorized the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing World War II to an end. But peace was short-lived. In 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. Truman committed U.S. troops to defend South Korea under a UN resolution, marking the first major conflict of the Cold War. The Korean War never technically ended under his watch, but Truman had firmly placed the U.S. at the head of global resistance to communism. 3. Lyndon B. Johnson, the Vietnam War. Johnson didn't start the Vietnam War, but under his presidency, it escalated rapidly. After the Gulf of Tonkin incident, Congress gave him sweeping war powers. Hundreds of thousands of U.S. troops were deployed. At home, protests erupted. On TV, Americans watched the war unravel in real time. Johnson's domestic achievements, things like civil rights and Medicare, were overshadowed by the conflict. In 1968, worn down and politically cornered, he chose not to seek re-election. 2. George H.W. Bush, the Gulf War. In 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. President George H.W. Bush quickly assembled a global coalition and launched Operation Desert Storm. In just 42 days, US-led forces drove Iraq out of Kuwait. Bush's approval ratings soared. But he chose not to invade Baghdad, a decision that shaped future conflicts. Though the war was brief, it reasserted US military dominance after Vietnam and the Cold War. 1. George W. Bush, the War on Terror. After the 9/11 attacks in 2001, President George W. Bush launched a global war on terror. Within weeks, US forces invaded Afghanistan to dismantle al-Qaeda. In 2003, Bush also ordered the invasion of Iraq, citing weapons of mass destruction, a claim that was never substantiated. Both wars dragged on for years. Bush's approval soared, then plummeted. He left office with the wars still unresolved and with deep questions about America's role in the world and the cost of prolonged conflict. War defines a presidency in ways few other events can. Some emerge as wartime leaders by fate, others by choice. But none leave office untouched by the weight of it. In the comments, tell us, which wartime president do you think faced the toughest decisions? If this video gave you something to think about, hit subscribe and tap the bell for more stories about the people and choices that shaped our world. Thanks for watching Decafacts. Until next time.